Hello, my name is Larry with Literary Gladiators, and today I'm going to be discussing a work that I read as part of the alphabetized Roundtable read. I was assigned the letter F and decided that I wanted to read The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand, which is a 1943 novel. And I wanted to talk about it because, well, I wanted to read it because it is a very influential book among modern activists and people involved in politics, especially on the right, which involves libertarianism and other mainline conservatives. I'm not really a mainline conservative, but I wanted to kind of get a look at what how potentially this work's cited by a lot of people as a major influence in how they came to believe what they believe, and I wanted to get an idea of how people can become libertarian and the ideas expressed in this story. So first I'm going to just talk about a basic review of the work. I thought it was okay. It's in 4 parts. I like the first 3 parts very much, and the fourth part kind of fell off a cliff for me. I admire people who have a basic worldview and a framework, that they want to set their work in, and then try to, tell a story based on that philosophy or that worldview. And this can be done very well. Like, one of my favorite authors, in case you may not know, is Flannery O'Connor. I talk about her all the time. But she's able to take her specific Thomistic worldview and create stories that very subtly emphasize different, points within that worldview, or different, tensions or problems, or, the story is based in the worldview, but never do you have like a mouthpiece character who's just basically saying, what the author believes about the world. It's all done very subtly, and makes for great stories. I think the truer the worldview, the better the storytelling. And in this case, we got Ayn Rand, who is trying to tell us about this story based on her own. She's a confessing atheist. She believes in egotism and this stuff that she founded a philosophical school called Objectivism, and one of the core tenets of this is that man's purest pursuit is his own happiness. And so the main character in this story, calls himself an egotist and is very much into pursuing self-interest. And the problem with this is that these tenets and these core beliefs are not really true. But that's not, you could still possibly tell a story based on those tenets that would be intriguing. And for the first 3 parts of this story, I found it to be so. I found the characters compelling, their interactions interesting, and it was a believable and grounded narrative. But then when we get to the 4th part, that all falls off the rails instantly, and what we get is some plot points that are completely bewildering and confounding, and also just a series of screeds, ideological screeds, based on what Ayn Rand believes. It's quite clearly that a lot of the characters too is, I'm talking about Howard Rourke and Gail Winan, in the conversations that they have, and even Peter Keating to a certain extent. As these characters are dialoguing with Roth, it just becomes, basically a manifesto. And the plot points are all in service of making some point about individualism that I find falls flat. And the plot itself kind of, like I said, runs off the rails and doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So that's basically, a general review. And I guess that's pretty much all I wanted to say. Would I recommend the book? Like I said, it's a very long read. So by the time you get to the fourth part, and the tension's been building, and you want to see, like how these characters are going to come to a head, and their motivations are going to guide one another into into like some kind of climax. And then you finally get to that point, and the decisions that are made are just not grounded in reality. It's kind of insane. And I don't want to give too much away, so I'm not going to. So this has been a spoiler-free discussion of The Fountainhead. I found it lacking, especially in the final part, and it kind of ruins the entire work because, everything that keeps you turning the pages early on is wanting to know how everything's going to work out in the end, and then the end is kind of absurd. So it's like, oh, that's how it's going to end. It just leaves you feeling like, okay, that was a waste of time, unfortunately. Now, would I recommend the work? So no, I wouldn't, based on that. But if you kind of want to get an idea, for the mind of a libertarian, again, many of them consider this work to be very influential. I know it's influential among architects too, and that's a different kind of story, because I do think that she has some interesting things to say about architecture. So I would recommend it, if that's what you're looking to get out of it. But if you're just looking for something to read, for a great story, then you're not really gonna find it there. So it all depends on why you might want to read it. It is good for understanding the libertarian mindset, I would say. Individualism, egotism, this kind of drive to pursue one's own interests above all else, and that's what leads to the best possible outcome for society. It's a stretch to say the least to believe that, but this will hopefully, if you read it, it will help you understand a little bit why they think that, but not much. I think it's more interesting from an architectural standpoint. A lot of architects have said that this work was influential to them, and I do think that it has interesting things to say about architecture, such as how the job of the architect is to design a building that looks like it belongs in whatever spot it's being built, like so it's kind of an extension of nature or a perfection of nature, which is really great and beautiful idea. I also think it has some good things to say about relationship between men and women, primarily, that men are, the masculine is the one that kind of reaches into nature and bends nature to suit his needs, or to suit needs in general. And feminine is more of a receptive, kind of passive agent, in that she's the one that receives this kind of bending, so to speak. So I thought it had some good things to say there. I know the feminists hate it, and just a general, fact that in this book there is actually delineation between man and woman, male and female, and the women kind of act like women and the men kind of act like men. To some extent, that's obviously going to anger the feminists a great deal, because they want to look at everything as being the same and equal, and differences are arbitrary and not grounded in reality. But of course they are. Okay, well, I guess that's pretty much all I wanted to say. Well, would I recommend it? Again, depends. If you want to read it for its own sake, no. If you want to read it, like as an aspiring architect, I would say yes. If you want to read it to understand libertarianism, yeah, you might be able to get something out of it, but not a whole lot. So that's it. Okay, I'll see you the next time that I make a video for you guys. Take care.